up, guys? Welcome back. We are one game deep in the NBA Finals at long last. It felt like a month, a year, a half year, something like that. I would say a pretty underwhelming game one, just because everything got out of hand pretty quickly for Dallas. So what I want to do is cover positives, negatives, takeaways for both Boston and Dallas, and then get to the overall series takeaways at the end. Let's start with Boston. They, of course, blow the doors off of the Mavs in the first quarter. Porzingis is basically a spaced-out Jokic when he is hitting his turnaround shots. Jokic presents a ton of pressure at the rim because when you guard him one-on-one, he can back you down and then lure help defense and kick it out and make the right reads. Porzingis is basically the same, except about 10, 12 feet farther back. He is waiting for doubles that didn't ever come, which I'll get to. But when he's hitting those turnarounds and he's able to get one-on-one matchups that he can punish with these turnarounds, are you going to double? Are you going to try to get the ball out of his hands? Instead of Denver, where you have a lot of very fast and tall and long athletes that are constantly trying to attack the rim like a bunch of piranhas, Boston's the opposite. Boston is hanging around the arc and letting Kristaps operate by himself. As soon as you double, he's going to make the kick out to the other guy, and the entire team is waiting to generate a wide open three as a result, not an uncontested dunk. I just thought that was really interesting. Again, with that much pressure, it's going to be something Dallas is going to have to figure out about the switching and how they're going to defend him. Led the Celtics to the largest first quarter deficit in NBA Finals history of 17 points, 11 of which were from KP, 3 rebounds and 2 blocks. I thought he had 3 blocks in just 7 minutes. That's barely over half of the quarter. Guess on Mazzulla's end, he probably just, bring in Kristaps off the bench and use him almost like a Trojan horse. We didn't know how healthy he was going to be, and they were all being kind of weird about that. So let's put him in for the second half of the first quarter and just let him detonate when they start getting comfortable or start subbing guys in, whatever. Boston's defense as well. That's going to be the biggest storyline of this game. They played the Mavericks the right way, taking what the Mavericks were showing them and giving them and really not letting up. To start, they were staying home on the pick and rolls, letting guys defend Luka and Kyrie one-on-one. I think most people were able to tell that Luka and Kyrie were a little bit hesitant, and it's no secret that those two in Dallas overall doesn't perform super great in game ones. Under Jason Kidd, they are only 1-5 in game ones, clearly trying to feel things out. The one-on-one defense was working well enough as the game progressed and Dallas inevitably generated good looks from the outside. The others on Dallas were not able to knock them down. And as that kept on happening and occurring, Boston really didn't need to adjust. And the big kicker there was, especially with the lob threats, you really needed JB, JT, and KP, all three of those guys, to be on point. You saw Jaylen Brown coming over on the help side and stuffing Kyrie. You saw him stuff, I think, Luka as well. You saw Kristaps, again, he was getting blocks all the time, but even more than that, he was basically having like a Rudy Gobert level of impact on this game. Like, guys were rushing shots, PJ getting in the teeth of the defense, rushing push shots. You had Josh Green taking ridiculous dunk attempts with KP hustling back. That was not very smart, sorry, man. The help side, the low man guys, JT, JB doing a great job reading, reacting defensively, and then Kristaps in general deterring guys at the rim. Negatives, you have Jason Tatum going 16 points, 11 rebounds, 5 assists, only 6 of 16 field goals, and 6 turnovers. And the Celtics blew the doors off of Dallas to the point where the bench guys were in with about 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Not going to touch on all the other questions about what that brings, but it brings me back to the Denver Lakers series when you had Michael Porter Jr. lighting the Lakers on fire, and Jamal was not shooting very well at all at that point very early in the playoffs, and nobody really cared. And it didn't matter because Denver's system and their other guys could step up and score, and they'd still win. It's kind of what's happening with Tatum, but a lot of intangibles that won't show up in the stat sheet. I know that because he finishes a plus 19 on-off differential, playing 42 minutes. So played almost the entire game, had the second highest on-off differential on the team, him and Drew Holiday. And Drew Holiday played almost 10 whole minutes fewer than him, and Jason Tatum had the second highest on-off differential. So I don't think it's fair to necessarily crucify him just strictly based off of offensive output and production. When you put up an on-off differential playing that many minutes, though, in aggregate, that signifies your specific defensive value. It was very similar with Jaden McDaniels for Minnesota, barely score, but his on-off differentials were every game he had the highest because his defensive presence. So let's not crucify Tatum. Let's not crucify Tatum for not playing the role that Luka is, for example, where everything has to flow through him offensively for all of the shiny highlights that we all love to see. The guy is getting his team wins by doing stuff that will not be highlighted. We just have to be wary of that. Overall takeaways, outstanding defense was incredible. Kristaps at the rim, I just can't get over how valuable that is in addition to spacing the floor. Such a unique archetype. He was hitting it from 28 feet away, and his rim protection is just so valuable. And then again, the help side from JT and JB. A couple monster help side blocks from Jaylen Brown, as well as dunks. A lot of just fire gets brought from all these stops. So I just really think it needs to be burned in the fabric of our memory. Kristaps Porzingis took 38 days to recover from his injury in the first round against Miami, and then came back tonight and had 11.3 rebounds, 2 blocks, literally in just 7 minutes. I just feel like it should never be the case that a guy like Kristaps that is capable of that kind of first quarter explosion should be afforded 38 days to just come back in and waltz back in for the finals. It's honestly almost bad for the product, and granted, should have came out regardless, even with a healthy Jimmy Butler, Donovan Mitchell, Halliburton, whoever was doing the courtside interview, I forget, was interviewing Porzingis before the fourth, and she asked him,
"What is it like getting back in the game after having not played for 38 full days? Are you feeling good? How are you doing?"
He literally responds on national television, "Oh, I feel really good, I'm not gonna lie." And it's like, that just shouldn't be that chipper. It's obviously not their fault. It's just insane. And if I was the CEO, if I was Adam Silver looking at this and Luka is on half a knee, it's almost like bad for the product. That's all I'm going to say. Dallas, positives. They did generate good looks. They just couldn't convert, especially in that third quarter when they were mounting the comeback and their defense was stepping up and they were able to get stops. Luka was heating up. Credit to Boston for stepping up their defense in the second half of the third quarter. But again, there were open looks that Kyrie was missing. Luka missed a couple, I think. There were, a couple as well from the others. If you can't exceed or match Boston's pace offensively, obviously it goes without saying, they are going to have variance. So, that is what it is. There was even one play out of a timeout where, Luka was under the rim and he, skirts out to the top of the key. And there was literally nobody within 8 feet of him, and he just bricks it. That's how the wind gets taken out of your sails when you're trying to mount a comeback, etc. So I do think that has to be looked at as positive. Next is great defense, specifically from Luka and Kyrie. Luka stripped Tatum, took a charge on Jaylen Brown at half court, stripped Kristaps Porzingis while getting back down because he was being targeted. Kai almost stripped Drew Holiday. It went out of bounds. Talk about leaders lighting fire for their teams. I just thought they did a great job, and especially in the finals against great teams. Really incredible defensive plays can galvanize a team just as much, but usually even more so than an incredible offensive play. And it was clear Luka was being targeted for Porzingis backdowns and drives. And just some of these strips and defensive plays by Luka, I have to think were very, very inspiring for the team. Negatives. So let's get Kyrie out of the way. He finishes with 12 points, with 12, 3, and 2, and then 2 steals, goes 6 for 19 field goals, 0 for 5 from 3, and then finishes with the team worst on-off differential of minus 19. With all the storyline and pressure and history behind this matchup, frankly was not that surprised overall. Per the first positive I had for Dallas, they did generate open looks for Kyrie, and he was able to get good looks for himself, particularly from beyond the arc. But they truly just weren't really falling, competing on defense, but finishes with that low of an on-off, so that is what it is. I get the sense that Kyrie is going to be fine, and this is just par for the course. You need to present enough of a threat, whichever way it is. If it's Jokic, it's at the rim. If it's KP, it's from the mid-range. Or it's Luka, it's in the short mid-range, waddling towards the rim. The thing is, if the stars are allowing themselves to get locked up one-on-one or really aren't producing in that manner, then the defense doesn't have to bend or shift to try and stop them. Similar to Porzingis in the first quarter, they are intentionally trying to get Josh Green on him, and he is lighting you on fire, but the Mavs refused to double, and that's what happened. It reminded me of Jokic in Game 5. The Timberwolves just let Rudy try to defend Jokic one-on-one, and that just looked awful. Basically what happened, the reason why that helps is not only because stars are just physically scoring points for your team, it strains the defense and it shifts it, or it should make generating shots for the others easier and the quality of those shots better. That's how it should work. That all rests on these superstars themselves, their ability to dominate and break the one-on-one matchups. Wouldn't you guess it, Kyrie and Luka were really struggling even against just a one-on-one defense, and wouldn't you know it, the others really did not perform well. At one point, they were 17 of 48 field goals and 1 for 12 from 3. Luka finishes with just 1 assist. I should have started there. That's probably the easiest way to summarize how this went. I also think there was a component of the inexperience of a lot of Dallas's guys showed, especially at this stage. You had Lively's foul trouble. We'll set aside the last two where Jaylen Brown basically just launched himself into Lively's body, just like Trae Young used to do. And JJ Redick, he had to say on the broadcast, like, that's insane. That's so stupid. In that moment, if you are Dallas, the only path forward is you have to fight fire with fire. Then again, the earlier fouls on Lively, those were very much his fault. I think he got a couple backcourt ones that just didn't look good. A lot of hand waving and shrugs about these calls. So I think he's acclimating. PJ and Gafford having 0 playoff experience between the two of them. You had PJ missing free throws. Gafford was getting eaten alive on the glass, just not a factor whatsoever. Every single play that Gafford has ever made is loud, right? It's super loud, a block, a lob, a finish, all those things. You really need that kind of fire for this Dallas team. Seemed kind of lackluster. 5 for 21 at the end of the third quarter from 3. The Celtics were like 16 of something. Overall takeaways for Dallas, Kyrie needs to step up specifically from the outside and just overall as far as gravity and pressure, goes without saying. 2, Luka's just going to be tested harder than ever before in his entire career, and that is because it's on both ends. Offensively, it is what it is, and that is how it's always been for Luka, and I think he's just built for that, and that's just how it is. For example, when they cut it to an 8-point deficit with 4 minutes, 27 seconds left in the third quarter. That was off of a Luka, Lou, fuck you 3 pull-up from very deep, and Boston called timeout at that point. And that was for his 27th shot with 4.5 minutes left in the third. So Luka was cooking. Luka was doing okay offensively, but specifically the defense now is what we're going to learn a lot about. You're trying to wear him down. They know he's on 1.5 knees. He was grimacing on the floor. You saw Porzingis back him down. You saw him getting drove on by Tatum and Brown. Granted, again, I personally feel like he did an outstanding job, but in order to do that outstanding of a job, you are expending a lot of your energy, and obviously it's going to be reflected on the other end when the Mavericks just need Luka the most. The rotation could tighten up dramatically when Porzingis is on the floor. There was a moment in the second quarter where I think KP got his second turnaround or face-up in that second quarter after the explosion in the first quarter. I think he got matched up with D. Jones or Josh Green. I think it was Josh Green again. And Kid was like, all right, I've had enough, and basically yanked him. And so he put in, right after that, it was Luka, Kyrie, D. Jones, PJ, and then Maxey. When KP's on the floor, these mismatches are just going to be bad. And I don't know. Schematically, you can try and finesse the switching. That's going to open up other opportunities there. But I think at the minimum, if you're just going to easily give the switch, I mean, Porzingis is going to average 35 a night. So that's why I would not be surprised moving forward if Kidd really tightens up that rotation. Last thing is the Mavs are just 1-5 in the first game of playoff series under Jason Kidd, which they won that first one this past series against Minnesota. So they were on a game one streak. Shouldn't be too unexpected there. I think the nature of this loss is obviously pretty eye-opening. We need to retool here and figure out how we're going to prevent this again, but keeping this a little bit grounded will be important. Overall series takeaways now. I feel like more and more this series is going to be determined by two things. 2.5. 3-point shooting and points off turnovers. Boston finishes +9 in made 3-pointers. Turnovers were about the same, but Boston was +6 in points scored off of turnovers, so able to capitalize more easily. Really, really good example of that as well was in that third quarter when Dallas cut the lead to 8 and seemed to have all the momentum to try and bring this game back to life. Boston started the third quarter 1 for 7 from 3. Through 4.5 minutes left, that's when Luka, I think it's 2 steals or gets the charge, gets a steal. Kyrie almost gets a steal. Like, Mavs really up their defense. Dallas cuts it to 8 on some great shot making from Luka, and then Boston calls a timeout, ramps up their own defense. Dallas starts missing threes, especially I think Kyrie had a really great open look. I think Luka started pulling a little bit early from outside, maybe some others as well, but basically Dallas starts missing threes, and then Boston pushes the lead back up pretty close to where it was. So Boston couldn't make threes, Dallas does, the lead shrinks, timeout, Boston ramps up defense, Dallas starts to miss threes, Boston pushes the lead back out. I think we're going to see a lot of that, a lot of the pendulum swinging of are we making shots, are we missing shots, how are we doing? All right, guys, thank you so much, and until next time.